Hello and welcome to another episode of me reacting to fan-made cards I found online. And for the third time in a row, I didn't find these cards online. They were sent to me by Mokeji. And today we will be going through the last few cards of that set. And we will start off with Mortal Engine. Um, this costs 3 MC. It requires that you yourself have a city. And it's the first city event, which usually, as it is in the game right now, doesn't make any sense because events are things that just happen once, and cities are things that you build. Same as building tags, for example, indicating buildings that you build. They're not things that happen just once. So you don't have this combination in the game yet. But lore-wise, this makes sense with this card because the city has wheels, as the lore text says. Mortal Engine requires that you own a city. We knew that from up here. And then you get to remove a player marker from any city that you control and place a city tile. And that new city will have a player marker on it. And usually, why would you pay money for that? Because you will lose points from the city that you owned previously and then possibly gain points from your new city and pay money for that. But let's say you put down a city in the early game, something like Research Outpost for its effect, because it's a great card, or something like Dome Crater, and to get an early conversion. But then you can't get that many conversions immediately afterwards, and just people start putting special tiles around your city, and that city won't be worth that much. And then at some point, an opportunity presents itself where you can maybe get a 2, 3, or even 4 point city spot. And then you can use Mortal Engine to just swap these city spots. You say, okay, I abandoned that one city that isn't scoring any points for me, and I put my player marker or my city on another spot and collect points there. That's actually crazy in some situations. But I think, and also you can surprise people like crazy with this because it's so cheap. Usually, if you see your opponent sitting on like 5 MC, you know they can't place another city. I can open this 3 point city spot and then close it next gen when I possibly it's my turn before theirs. But with Mortal Engine, you can really surprise them. So I love it. And I think because that's such a niche case, and in the base case, or in the best case for you, this card doesn't do anything because in the best case for you, your cities are scoring already really well. So the best case of Mortal Engine is a case in which something has gone wrong for you. And I liked it. So I think this is really creative. I love that he found a way to make it logical to have an event with a city tag. Really, really cool. Next up, we have Quantum Entanglement. This requires a space and a science tag, so one of each. It costs 1 MC and is a science event, so like invention contest, for example. Immediately perform any one opponent's card actions as if this was that card. So Quantum Entanglement acts as that card in your opponent's stack. Then add this card to your event pile, discarding any resources here. Aha, okay, discarding any resources here. So you can't copy Physics Complex. You can copy Physics Complex out of their played card, but you won't get 2 points out of it because you will discard the resources after using Quantum Entanglement. That's interesting because that doesn't leave that many great actions, I think. I think a lot of the really strong actions are actions that let you collect resources, so 1 point animals and physics mainly, or something like Jovian Lanterns. Quantum Entanglement, you will probably mainly copy card draw, especially stuff like AI, High Tech Lab, Tychomagnetics. There's obviously no card other than AI that draw 2, but with Tychomagnetics and High Tech Lab, at least you can possibly look at a lot of them. Because other good actions, like for example Electrocat, aren't that great if you need to buy and pay for Quantum Entanglement. Because Electrocat, for example, great action if you do it yourself. and you can do it continuously, that's an upside of 5 MC per activation, because you exchange 1 steel, which is worth 2, for 7 MC. So that's 5 MC difference. But Quantum Entanglement to buy and play costs 4. So that's just 1 MC upside. Of course, you could draw this for free, have a discount and more combo potential, and then Quantum Entanglement can be insane. But in the base case where you have to buy this in a draft and pay for it, I think it's not worth it to use on something like Electrocat, and definitely not worth it to use on like Space Elevator or something like that. But there can be fringe cases, like there can be insane Martian Rails in the late game, there can be insane Martian Zoo in the late game, and of course card draw. And if you get combo potential, Quantum Entanglement can be crazy. But it's not the most influential card. Also, you don't block your opponent from using that action, because it says perform any one opponent's card action as if this Quantum Entanglement was that card. So you also put your player marker on Quantum Entanglement to mark it as done. Their card, for them, it's as if it had been never used. So they can still use the AI that gen. Because otherwise Quantum Entanglement would be really strong. This way, it can be strong in the right scenario, and especially if you have combo potential. But yeah, great idea. Planning Appeal. Another cheap event. This costs 1, requires that you own 3 tiles on Mars. It's an event. The next tile you play this generation can be placed on any unclaimed space except specific city reserved spaces, so no Noctis. You may ignore other placement restrictions. Because this says in all caps any unclaimed space, this sounds like you can also do it on ocean tiles, unclaimed ocean tiles, and you shouldn't be able to do that, because then you can break the game. If Mohole Area, Protected Valley, and Mangrove are played, there's only 9 ocean spots left for 9 oceans, and if you then play Planning Appeal and put a city or a greenery there, the game just doesn't end. So this needs to be clarified. But if we assume that is the case, then I really like that card, because it's, again, probably going to be used mainly as a hate card to put cities where they shouldn't belong. But there's other use cases. You can teleport away with greeneries with Planning Appeal, because usually you can only put greeneries around your own tiles. And if you get blocked into putting greeneries next to your opponent's cities, or your ocean walk got blocked, something like that, you can use Planning Appeal to teleport away. So that can be quite nice. And also, yeah, putting cities where they shouldn't belong. You can deny points from your opponents and gain points yourself. And there's other fringe cases like Research Outposts and Natural Preserve that usually can't be put next to other tiles, stuff like that. But once again, really niche use case, really creative. And once the thing with the oceans is clarified, I think this card is really great. And not too strong, in my opinion. Cleanup Crew. Oh, this is too small. Okay. 10 MC. Half a point per resource here. Move 1 resource from a blue card with the most resources, once again in all caps, to this card. It has a red outline, the resource here. So I guess any player can be targeted by this, but not really targeted, because you can't decide from what card you steal the resources. It could be your own card, because it's the card with the most resources on it. So that's likely going to be stuff like Decomposers, Ecozone, Jovian Lanterns, floaters where you put 2 on, or Fly to Titan with, stuff like that. And once again, in the right situations, that's crazy. Obviously, each time you can steal primarily from your opponent if they played something like Decomposers early on. It's great. But the best case scenario is, of course, if nobody has played any resource collecting cards besides your opponent, and he's played Physics Complex, for example, and used it a few times. Then Cleanup Crew is crazy, because it's 2.5 points per gen. Because you steal 2 from them, you gain half a point yourself. But you need to really play around cleanup crew, even in the base case. You can't be the one with the most resources. You can be the one if you have the most resources on something like tardigrades. Then a cleanup crew is still point positive, but just by a quarter of a point, so not great. So you really want to steal from your opponents. In higher player count games, when you have more opponents, more people that could be collecting resources, yeah. And in colonies, if they are trading with Enceladus, Titan, or Miranda, and collect a lot of resources, it's quite easy, or can be quite easy to use cleanup crew to wreak havoc. And I love that you can just target everything, even if they're playing protected tabs, they're not safe. You can target their floaters, their science resources. Think about the weird case where the only resource on any card is a science resource on Search for Life. That would be so funny. And you steal it, they lose 3 points. That would be so funny, but that will never happen. That's too niche. But I love this card. Really interesting. Okay, efficient urban planning. This costs 12, has a city tag on it. As I see, it doesn't place a city, so it's a city card that doesn't place a city tag. I think only Spire does that. That's interesting. When you play a city tag, including this, place a player marker on any unreserved tile, non-adjacent to an opponent's tile. So you can't be annoying as heck with that. Only you may build there. Still a bit annoying, definitely. These markers also don't need to be adjacent to your tiles or adjacent to your markers. When you build a city on one of your marked tiles, increase your energy production 1 step. Okay, I have to think about Arcadian communities with this, because Arcadian communities would be crazy with this. The main restriction of efficient urban planning, I think, is getting a lot of markers, because you won't play that many city tags. And remember, standard project cities don't count for this upper effect here. You won't get any markers with standard project cities. You can collect them, but you won't get them. But Arcadian communities can place markers with their ability, and they are indistinguishable from these. They are also indistinguishable from land claim, for example, which is why you get 3 MC back if you put if you as Arcadian communities put a tile on land claim. So efficient urban planning together with Arcadian communities would be annoying as heck and crazy strong, because the reward you get if you put a city on one of your marked areas is a power prod, and that's crazy. That's 7 MC worth in value. That's really, really strong. The problem, once again, is getting markers out. But if you then put something like Cupola City on one of your marked areas, it's as if Cupola City didn't cost any power prod. You need the power prod to play it, but you get it back. Yeah, crazy strong. But the problem here, I think, is efficient urban planning costs 12 plus 3. So even after collecting 2 markers, for which you, once again, need to play another city tag and place 2 cities, even after 2, you haven't recouped the cost of efficient urban planning. Because, yeah, a power prod is worth 7 MC. So I think it's a bit too weak, except in the case where you play Arcadian communities, and then it's crazy. Also, I think you can't place these markers on spaces off Mars, but off-Mars cities can trigger the effect up here, because something like Phobos Space Haven has a city tag. It allows you to put a marker down, but only on Mars. So you can't immediately collect it. Also, I think if you play something like Cupola, you can put the marker down first and then collect it immediately. So that's quite strong. Sponsored Student. This one costs 5 MC and grants a point. So whatever the effect is, it should be worth roughly 3 MC, because a point is worth 5 MC, and then what's left of the cost of the card is just buying it. Draw a green card with a city tag, or a blue card with a microbe tag, or a red card with an earth tag. Whichever is drawn first, discard the rest. So you get 1 card out of this. You just flip the top cards off the deck, and if you find a green city tag, you take that. but if the first card you find is a blue microbe, take that, and so on. It's a really interesting choice of cards and city and project colors here, because the blue microbes can be quite strong. Stuff like decomposers, viruses, sulfur-eating bacteria. They can only also be trash, like regular eaters, for example, is pretty bad. But then the blue event tags also quite strong. Not blue event tags, the Earth event cards also quite strong. Can be something like large convoy or important nitrogen. The green city tags, they are a mixed bag for sure. Strongest city research outpost is not in there, but stuff like spaceport or open city can, in the right situation, be really strong. But I think there's not that much to say about this card, because it's just fair value, I think. The card is worth 3 MC. It's not worth much more than that, because you don't get a choice like you do with Invention Contest. You can draw different cards with it, and if you could make use of all of these three, then it's definitely better than blindly drawing. But yeah, it's just a fair value card, I think. Interesting. And the last one of today is Elysium Republic. I think the cooperation in the last video was Hellas Republic, and obviously this is a spin on Tharsis Republic. So there's a Republic's city corp for each of the base game maps, basically. Hellas and Elysium aren't base game, but you know what I mean. So this one has a city tag, same as Tharsis should have. Shouldn't have a building tag, should have a city tag, because you place a city with this corp as well as your first action. Start with 40 MC, not that much starting capital, but 3 MC prod, and that's quite nice. That can really help you get going in the early game. As your first action, you also draw 2 cards with requirements. Okay, basically you have 2 first actions. You place your city and you place your cards. This should also probably be clarified. So you probably draw your 2 cards with requirements as your first action, and then as your second action you place the city. And then you have an ongoing effect here. Whenever you place a city, you gain you add 1 population resource here on this city on this corp. You may discard a number of population here to act as that number of wild tags, okay, for the duration of a single action. Okay. Population resources here are worth 3 MC when buying cards to hand. Okay, so you have 2 uses of population resources. You can either use them in the draft or when using Inventor's Guild or Business Network to buy cards for free, basically. Spend them. Or you spend them and use them as wild tags for a single action. So either when claiming milestones or when playing cards that have tag effects or tag requirements. So NRA, you could use it as a plan tag, as your third plan tag to get your 4 plan prod out of NRA. You could use it as your third science tag, for example, to play something like AI. Or you could use it to claim Rim Settler, for example, as your third Jovian tag. The cool thing is, because you can use X amount of population as X amount of wild tags, you can stack these. So you can have 3 tags on here and use them all in one go when playing NRA as 3 plan tags. So that's the only upside this has over just a straight up wild tag, because a wild tag on a corp like Septum Tribus can be used indefinitely for as many cards, milestones, and so on as you want, but it can't be stacked. So it helps you a bit on something like AGT, but it can't get you there all the way. Elysium Republic theoretically could. But the problem is, the way you get these population resources, once again, is placing cities. And as I said, with efficient urban planning, you are not placing that many cities. It's just not happening. You're maybe placing, like, if I'm not incentivized to place a lot of cities through, like, an ability or something, I'm placing maybe 2 or 3 cities in a game, not more than that. Of course, if you have a really strong effect. And I think this effect can be strong, but it's not. You really need to draw into the right cards to make great use of this. If you have an effect like this, you could be incentivized to place more cities. And if you're going for a ground game anyways, and yeah, this might be cool. You might also just draw into like one of the, because you're drawing specifically cards with requirements, you might draw into something crazy like AI, mass converter, warp drive. And then yes, placing cities will significantly help you to get those cards online, and they can be game changing. So I think this is once again a really interesting concept. Once again, I don't think it's too strong. I think Mokeji really hit the mark with most of these cards. I think Fish Planning is a little bit too expensive, but all of the other cards I think were super interesting concepts, and I think, or I feel like they were all fairly balanced. So yeah, congrats on that, Mokeji. I think I really love all of these. But yeah, thanks again for providing me these cards, and guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you also want me to review your cards or react to your cards, let me know. Other than that, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one. Have a good one, guys, and goodbye.